Hey, what's poppin', guys? Sizzle here, and today we're taking a look at the eSports 2014 Summer Case. So the first skin we have is the Xm10114 Red Python, and it's like a really dark snake camo, which actually is kind of nice that it applies to the whole weapon. The downside being that it's kind of um, just really dark. I think in most lighting in an actual game, this will be virtually impossible to even notice. Unless you're like out in the sunlight, which is not on every map. I mean, I guess it's on a lot of them, but I don't know. I think the skin design is actually kind of cool. It's like a red snake camo, but the just darkness of this and the fact that there's like zero lighting on it kind of moves it down to probably the D tier, as good as the skin design is. I think if it played with the lighting better and was a lighter skin, I would probably easily put this in C tier though. Next up, we have the Dark Water. Um, Yeah, I mean, it's unlike the name that says it's dark, it's shiny. That's it. It's like a shiny scout. I mean, I guess there's some kind of design to it. I just don't know what that design would be. It just looks like a shiny, scratched up scout, though. Just stick to stock. This is nothing really special, unless you really like a shiny version of the stock scout, in which case, go ahead. Next up, we have the CZ Auto Hexan. Which, yeah, has a little hex design at the top, and otherwise it's just like a midnight blue kind of color. I think that's actually like midnight palm. I think there's a skin virtually like this, but with palm trees instead of hexes. It's definitely okay. I'd say you can't really go wrong with it. You can't really go too good with it either, though, so it's a solid C tier skin. Then next up is the Negev Bratatat, and yeah, it's got a little cartoon explosion on the bottom, and just says Bratatat across the whole thing with some like bullet holes on it. It's a pretty mediocre design. Nothing crazy. Definitely not bad. Definitely just probably the best thing we've seen so far, but still very much a C tier skin. Then we have the USPS Blood Tiger, which is a very dark red, like stripes on a very dark camo. To the point where you can only see it in like extremely like specific lighting. You can almost see the camo. Even then, you can't really see it. You can almost barely tell the skin isn't completely gray. It's just kind of what it looks like. I think this is so poor with lighting that I would actually put in the F tier, despite the actual design not being completely horrible. It just doesn't work in like any lighting. Then next up is the Mac 10 Ultraviolet, and it's very simple skin, gray and purple. It's very simple, but very clean. This is a low fact nude too, and I don't see any noticeable scratches other than the bottom, which is always off your screen. So I would actually say it's a pretty solid skin. It's just a very simple color scheme redesign, but I really like how it looks. I'd say it's a solid B tier skin for me. And next up is the P90 Virus, which is covered for some reason on that side, but it looks kind of like this. It's your basic kind of skull skin, but with like a plague virus thing going on, except only in parts of the weapon and stripes, and then they have these random virus symbols in the other part. It's one of those that gets really scratched up despite being factory new, because it's an older P90 skin. And honestly, the design is nothing really impressive. I can't say this is F tier. It's obviously different from stock, and I say some people like it, but I think there's just better looking skins like the Grim, which is just pretty much a straight upgrade of this one. Then we have the Glock 18 Steel Disruption, and it's like a steel DD pat, which actually ends up looking really cool with the lighting, because in the basic lighting, just looks like, like the gray Glock. Then when it's in lighting, you can see like three different shades of gray making the DD pat design. And I'm normally not a fan of the DD pat design, but I actually really like how this plays with the lighting. If it looks anything like that in game, it's definitely a solid C tier, probably just under the Negev. Then next up is the Mp7 Ocean Foam, which is a ocean PNG slapped onto a weapon. Most of it's still stock, like the tip and everything else. And you wouldn't really tell this is ocean from above. It's just kind of a weird color of light blue. It's definitely not the light blue most people like, I'd say. It's just a weird color of light blue with some white like spider webs across it. It looks like an ocean if you really think about it, but you'd have to think about it a lot. It's barely better than stock. It's like the lowest possible D tier, where like someone somewhere might like it. Then we have the PP Buzzin Blue Streak, which is like a blue streak across a black PP Buzzin. It actually looks surprisingly solid. This is a good color of light blue, and the kind of way the stripes are done almost reminds me of like Gatorade, like coming out of a Gatorade bottle, which is actually a pretty cool feeling. And I think it actually looks pretty solid, very unique. There's not a lot of weapons with this kind of design and coloring in the game, to my knowledge. And I actually really like how this one looks. So for me, it's actually probably the most good weapon we've looked at so far. Very solid high B tier placement. Then we have the Deagle Crimson Web, and this is one with a lot of webs on it. I'm honestly not as big of a fan of the Crimson Web as most other people are. I know a lot of people really fucking love Crimson Webs and will die by them. For me, it's a kind of basic design. It's a the dark red Deagle's kind of a nice looking thing already. But then for some reason, either it depends on how you look at it, it's either cracked glass or spider webs across the whole thing. To me, it looks more like cracked glass, but I can see why you might think it's a spider web. And I just don't think it looks that good. I think it would have looked nicer if it was just a clean red finish. And I think the webs kind of ruin the skin, and for me, it's a D tier. I know a lot of people really like this one though, so for those people, it's probably a lot better for them, but I don't like it that much. Then we have the P2000 Cordycera, pretty much used exclusively in trade-ups, and I can see why. It's like some stained glass painting art that you can barely even see because it hovers like a small part of a small weapon. And then the rest of it's just a solid navy blue, which is nothing special and doesn't look particularly good. I'd say this is probably just above the Ocean Foam, but only barely above. Like these, like if there was like an E tier, this and the Ocean Foam would be on it. But since there's only a D tier, they're just at the bottom of the D tier. Then next up is the Ugg Bengal Tiger. Which yeah, it's one of those Uggs that's not a full skin, and it's one of those Uggs where, despite being a relatively low float one, it still has a shit ton of scratching that ruins pretty much the whole skin. It is a very kind of nice camo. I think if it went across the whole thing, it would still just be like a maybe low C tier skin. But since it's kind of an unfinished skin and has the scratching problems, I'm gonna say it's a very not bottom D tier low skin, but still toward the lower end of the D tier, where I wouldn't really want it. And next up, we have the Corticera, which has the same stained glass design, but coming out as a tree branch, which is kind of cool. I think that's a penis right here. I don't know what else this would be. This just looks like a dick right here. On the front here, there's some leaves here. I guess those are probably leaves, just kind of in a weird spot there. And they had these little like hashtag star symbols on random parts of it. Not really sure what they were going for, but this definitely doesn't look as bad as the P2000 because the branch design is actually kind of a cool concept. But it's kind of hard to tell what most of the rest of the design is. Just looks like a kind of blue from most distances. So for me, it's still a D tier skin, and I don't really see it being used too often. I mean, it's probably pretty expensive because it's pretty old too. It just doesn't look that great either. Then we have the Nova Bloomstick, which is our final pink for this collection. Which, yeah, it's got stock shotgun in the front, but that's not too bad. It actually kind of goes pretty well. And then the whole back is just a blooming tree with some very nice kind of floral flowers just growing on the tree with a nice red background. It's a very, very clean design. I don't know why they couldn't have just made the front red as well, though. There's not really any reason to stop them from doing that. But otherwise, it's just a really solid back design. Definitely belongs in the C tier despite being like an unfinished skin. Yeah, it's just a pretty solid design for a skin. And next up, we have the M4A4 Bullet Rain, which has this kind of crazy looking guy in the back that you'll never really see unless you're inspecting the weapon. A nice red finish on the front here and the back. And then clouds raining down these red bullets. I don't know why the bottom isn't colored. That is a very weird thing to exclude. And on the back, there's almost like a crazy looking cloud. You can see like one eyeball there, the mouth, and then like another eye. It's kind of funny touch there. And there's kind of one on the front I didn't even realize because it's also colored white, so it'd be hard to see. But yeah, if the bottom of this was also colored like this kind of background design, I think this would actually be a really clean looking skin. But for some reason, like half of this weapon just does not have camo applied to it or is very scratched, despite being fact new. So that kind of ruins a solid design. I definitely can't say this is like a really horrible skin, but I still don't. I still think there are better options now, especially with the red DD pad. It's just kind of better. or the Evil Daimyo or whatever. There's just better versions of this, and the one cool part of the bullet rain gets cut off for no reason, which kind of ruins it for me. So for me, it's a D tier for just being kind of unfinished and scratched. And our final weapon skin for this collection is the AK-47 Jaguar. Very basic jungle camo, very nice wood finish on the handle, back, and like front here. That's on the stock AK, which is the best part of the stock AK in my opinion. And it's like a jungle camo, and then the Jaguar covering the perfect parts of the rifle. It looks really cool. It's just a really solid design of a Jaguar, and you can have a lot of different kind of left-facing heads, like IV Power or the Howl, for example. I've seen was a really cool craft that can make this look even better. But even without that, it's a pretty solid-looking AK. It's definitely not like an insane one, not one of those crazy AKs that are like Omega S tier, but it's still a really solid one. To the point where I'd actually put it at low B tier, despite me generally not liking camos. I think the Panther is done really well and placed really well in here, and the crosshair on like the red eye is a really nice touch. But yeah, that's it for the eSports 2014 Summer Collection case, whatever you want to call it. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at these skins as much as I did, and I will see you in the next one.